Hello, my name is Miss Sarah, and I just wanted to kind of go over some aspects of Jack's writing. I had helped him with his summer programs as well as his admissions essays, his primary essay, the Common App essay, as well as his supplementals. And it was a real pleasure to work with Jack. I've been doing this work for many years, and Jack was really such a gracious worker. He was always on top of all of his essays. And I just wanted to kind of talk about what he wrote about in his essays that kind of showed that identity that he was speaking of earlier. And as we know, he was admitted to University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school. And I'm hearing about all the other universities he was admitted to, and he is definitely so well deserved. He's worked very hard with Ivymind, and I'm listening to a lot of what Jack had said about working with Miss Betty and the research that he had done, and it's just amazing. So I worked with Jack on his admissions essays from about December of 2023. I'm sorry, to January 2024, the common application and the supplements. And as we know, UPenn had at least 65,000 applicants for early and regular decision who were accepted in 2023 was 3,345. But you can see some of these numbers, usually hovering around 7% acceptance rate. So it really speaks volumes to Jack's abilities, and also Ivymind's role in this process as well. And so what made Jack stand out with his essays? Well, first of all, he was very self-motivated, and he also followed the system that we created as well. And he was very interested in being better and better and better. Very well organized. He revised his essays time and time again. He was not satisfied always with, the first couple of versions. He wanted to keep going, and very inventive. He reached out when he needed advising. So I always try to be, and I think all the essay mentors and counselors at Ivymind are readily accessible and do edit and mentor in a timely fashion. And Jack was able to reach out whenever he needed advising on his essays. And again, if he wasn't happy with just one version, he always wanted to add more. And that's what it takes to also work well with Ivymind, in that we will work well together if you're motivated, and making this process so much smoother, so much easier, and feeling a lot more fulfilled. The admissions essays are just a piece of this big puzzle, but they're a very important piece, because these are the places where you can really tell the admissions officers who you are. And Jack did a fabulous job in his pieces and identifying the parts of himself that he wanted to express. And so Jack followed the process of essay writing very precisely, and again, very easy for me to work with, and very successful in that way. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about his essay a little bit. He gave me permission to be able to talk about his essay. And at Ivymind, we really care about getting that permission to be able to share it, and how we filed and how we worked together, just to give some kind of background on that. When we first met, I did go over the filing system with him, and we brainstormed. We had a 2-hour session on Zoom where we brainstormed for the Common App essay, the most important essay of I would even say of the whole application is the Common App essay. And it's the one essay that many, many schools pay attention to, especially the University of Pennsylvania for Jack. And so we did multiple versions of supplemental essays as well. And I'm just going to kind of show you that a little bit and tell you about what he wrote about that really made him stand out. And we also got feedback along the way from a literacy specialist as well as former admissions officers. And so Jack was very receptive to the feedback, to this is why this essay stands out, or these are the improvements that need to be made. And so Jack had such an open mind, and he was really just a give and take kind of student. And so really thrilled to work with Jack. And he, like I said, he was very receptive, very creative. And so we worked with I kind of do we do a shared folder, and this was Jack's folder here. And what we did was we created a supplemental essay packet for Jack, where all of the essays would be in one place. Although you can find all the essays, let's say for Brown might have 5 separate essays. The University of Pennsylvania has 3 essays outside of the Common App essay. And so what our literacy specialist does is she finds out all the supplemental essays, and we create packets. So Jack was able to just find his essays, the prompts very fast, and be able to refer to that before they update them in July, which is usually when that happens. And this is what the supplemental essay packet looks like. And hopefully it helped kind of Jack along on his journey to be able to find those prompts easily. And once you finalize your list, then, we create these for you. So Jack had to answer 3 prompts outside of the Common App essay. One is where you have to write a short thank you note to someone you have not yet thanked. This came about pretty much after COVID quarantine. And so thanking people and gratitude has become a very big piece of this. And so we're going to take a look at Jack's supplemental essays. I'll just go over a couple excerpts from it. We don't have to read all of it, but Jack was really great because he was able to tap into his personal reasons for wanting to thank the person he wanted. And also at the same time, he was talking a lot about himself. And so that's what these essays are about. Jack was able to say, look, this is who I'm thanking, but he was also able to divulge a lot about his own identity through that gratitude. And so the first one where you had to write a thank you note. The second one is how will you explore the community of Penn, to consider how Penn will help shape your perspective and identity. And Jack was able to really talk about, his the way that he's explored his interests. And he had mentioned that earlier, and we'll take a look at his piece in a moment. But how the community of Penn really speaks to Jack, and how Jack can contribute to the community at Penn. And so he was able to perfectly intertwine those two things. And of course, again, it took a couple versions to get it to where we, felt that it needed to be by looking at those patterns. And number 3, considering the specific undergrad school, you have to say, this is the academic and intellectual interest that I'm interested in, and this is how I connect to UPenn academically, and this is how UPenn connects to me academically. And so all of these are only, if you take a look, 200 words for each one, minimum 150 words. That might not seem like a lot of words, but that means that we have to make sure that every single word, every single idea, every single sentence matters. And Jack was really great about going back and forth and making sure he fills in those places that needed to be filled in, and for us to catch anything that might be missing. And so again, at Ivymind, we try to encourage, and I think Jack was much obliged to make sure that every sentence matters, every sentence is specific, and that the research is done for UPenn to be able to understand what they want, what they're looking for. And we've studied these for so many years that we're able to see the patterns and to understand how to guide writers. And Jack is already such a wonderful writer naturally. And the fact that he is committed to journalism at school, he wasn't difficult to work with. His writing was very clear. He knew how to clarify things. He was very creative in how he put some of his words and ideas together. So it was really a pleasure to be able to polish that and to be able to talk to him along his journey with his writing. This was the shared folder. This is what it looked like. And as you can see, he wrote many, many essays. And even if he recycled some of them, which is fine to do, we just made sure that it fit the prompts for all of the schools. And so we're a very organized, this is a very organized system. And if we follow this precisely, there should be less stress. And hopefully for Jack, there was a lot less stress when it came to the writing supplements. And again, of course, his accolades throughout high school were beautiful, and he worked very hard for all of this. And, and at the same time, you want to be able to communicate how hard you worked, and you want to be able to communicate what kind of person you are and what you're going to bring to the university. And that is why these essays are so important. And that's why, Jack took them so seriously. And I think that they really stood out for him in his applications. So when we first met, we kind of brainstormed ideas, getting to know him. He told me a lot about his talents in math and chess and coding and basketball and soccer. So at Ivymind, we really like to get to know the students. And I really feel like I got to know Jack. And Jack, he didn't, let anything off the hook. He said, look, I rewrote this. I wanted to do this again. And I like that about Jack. He was very motivated. And that's what we also are working very well with people who are independent in their working, and they can really be receptive to the help. I got to learn about his inner capacities, how independent he is and ambitious he is and curious. And so he was able to verbalize all of this for me, and I was able to get to know him even before he started writing. So that was part of that brainstorming session, which again lasted 2 hours. And what I normally do is I will let him give me the idea. And then at the end of the idea, I try to give him a suggestion right there on the spot. And at the end of our 2-hour session, I'd say, hey, Jack, why don't you go produce a version 1? And I always tell Jack, version 1 can be ugly. It can be messy. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to mold it like a piece of clay. But Jack, I'll tell you, his first versions were always pretty nice. They were never too arduous for me to get through. And so he made it a little bit easier on me as well, because he always wrote pretty well right away. But we always, that first version, that's always like a lumpy piece of clay, and we like to mold it. We also provide, so when Jack did his UPenn essays, what we'd like to do is we'd like to call it a first reader's response. And so this is all our research from all these years. So year after year after year, when students are admitted to UPenn, we like to give advice to the students who are working on it. And so we put a compilation together, and we provide this for the student year after year. And so we look at the patterns from the year before, and I provided this for Jack on his V1. Where we put the UPenn excerpt and what UPenn encourages students, if you see here, to reflect on themselves, their community, their interests. And this is before Jack was writing anything. Actually, when he did his V1, or his version 1, I was able to put this excerpt in here and hopefully guide him along the way based on our research. And so we also look at their website, obviously, and we like to get that. But if you look down here, it says, in Ivymind history. So we try to provide the types of students that were admitted to these schools. And that's what Jack got to read. So if you see here, in Ivymind history, the types of students admitted to UPenn consisted of people who included stories that clearly connected to commitment or learning and service. Applicants connected past experience and reflections to growth and contributions to the world around them. And Jack has done all of these things, by the way, even by working in the senator's office. Writers use specific imagery, detail, and extended metaphor to draw the reader in and to create a profound message about identity that connects creatively to UPenn's values. And admitted students organize the essay to flow with clear transitions and connections from one part to the next, which Jack definitely did in his Common App essay. And all ideas fit without digression and propel the essay to a full circle conclusion. And we usually provide a sample here. So this is the sample that Jack had received from the past, along with our compilation of essays that Jack had access to be able to read. So we're just going to take a look at Jack's pieces. It doesn't mean we have to read all of it, but I just wanted to give you, some ideas on what Jack wrote about and what that process looks like. So his Common App essay in particular, I like to call that a slice of life. It deals with a very serious topic, which was his mother's illness. Some students, when they write about things or subjects that might be sad, that wasn't really the case with Jack. Of course, the situation was sad that his mother was ill and that he wrote about this, but it was more so very hopeful essay, honestly. And it wasn't just about his mother's illness. It was about how he felt about the illness, how it affected him, and what he did because of it, right? And he shows a lot of doing in his piece. So it wasn't just sitting back and reflecting, but it was also saying, look, it inspired me to do research on cancer. And so you see a lot of the doing there. And so that's why I believe his Common App essay was successful, is that it dealt with a serious topic, but not in a sad way. It weaved relatable and authentic experiences surrounding the illness and Jack's coming to terms with it. He uses metaphors from the book, The Time Machine, which is a classic novel that his mother had gifted him. And he uses a slice of life narrative style. That means he's taking a piece from his life, a real piece from his life, and really showing us and bringing us into his world a little bit. And he also sounds very earnest. When Jack wrote this, it was very authoritative. It was very honest. No one could tell this story but Jack. And you could tell that through his writing. And so Ivymind mentors and counselors are able to see and able to evaluate, does this sound honest? Does this sound earnest? Does this have authority? And does this stand out? He offers hope in the narrative, like I said, and it shows him doing something about his sadness over her illness, making something constructive out of it, right? And so that's what really made his essay stand out quite a bit. He also reflects on how it made him feel. And like I said, it was not too depressing. It was more about growth. It was about growth, and universities like to see that. And that's what Jack provided. And it also exemplified this really beautiful shared experience between Jack and his mom, between he and his mother. And he also gives a literature reference, which was The Time Machine, which I really loved. And again, some metaphors. And so we're just going to take a quick look at the process and just the excerpts from the essay. And then we'll kind of take a look at his UPenn supplemental essays, where he described his experience. Remember what I just said, the doing? It shows the doing. That's what Jack did. He was able to craft how Penn would add to his experiences and what he will bring to Penn. And that's what Penn loves. They want to know not just what Penn can do for you, but what you can do for Penn. And Jack really delivered on those essays. So I just want to kind of take a look at his pieces. So if you take a look here, Jack and I, like I said, we started with brainstorming. This is his Common App essay folder. This is his whole shared folder here. Look how beautiful this is. And this is what Jack did. He was very organized with when he completed something, when we completed the edits. And as you can see, look how many schools he applied to. And I was able to help him with all of these, which was really an honor. So the biggest part was right here, which is the Common App essay. And we do a brainstorming sheet that I just showed you. And after we brainstorm, I said, hey, why don't you go to the drawing board? He did come up with 2 separate Common App essays, but we ended up finalizing on the one that we call ovarian cancer, which is the illness that his mother had. And so we like to name it by the subject of the piece. Okay, so if you look here, we started with version 1. And as you can see, I didn't do anything to version 1 until I made a copy of it. And that's how we did it. And so Jack said, hey, Sarah, Common App version 1 is filed. And what I would do is go in and make a copy of it, and I would read it directly. And if you can see here, I made comments at the top. I don't normally put comments on the side because I find them to be a little confusing. You can't tell but I made direct changes to every single sentence. And the reason I do that is so I can show Jack from my experience in the past and any patterns. I make direct changes so I can show Jack, hey, what do you think of this, right? And so it forces Jack to have to go in and read it precisely and see what I changed. I highlighted things in yellow that I feel needed to be added. And as you can tell, you can't tell that I changed it. You have to read it to see that I changed it. And the reason I do it that way is so Jack can really ask himself, why did she change this? And he has to recognize and get to know his own piece as he goes through. And so that was the rationalization on that. And so Jack would make a copy of this and he would do, look at this, he would do a version 2. You can't tell, but Jack went right in and he made direct changes. And he said, hey, Sarah, version 2 is ready. And then we started dancing, right? And we went version 2, edit it, version 3, edit it. And he finalized at about version 5. It did not take 13 versions to do that. We were able to finalize in the 5th version. And in between the way, I think it was, Jack, it might have been on like version 3 or something. I'm trying to remember. But I did send it out to our admissions consultant and also the literacy specialist and other editors to get feedback from them. So I am not the only person that looks at these pieces. I do ask for feedback along the way, right? From other professionals on the team, and I share that with Jack. So I say, hey, here's feedback from Julie, our literacy specialist, or here's feedback from Clarice. And Jack and I are able to make those adjustments as we go along. And so Jack really turned this around, guys. He really went into the book and started relaying things to the book. So if you just look at and this was all Jack, he was very creative. He went into the book here, and if you just look at this first paragraph, with a resolute breath, the time traveler steps into the gleaming capsule, moving dials until finally the mechanical gears begin their rotating dance. As the gears accelerate, the world outside starts to blur and bend in ways that defy the laws of physics. Moments later, the distortion clears, revealing a world subtly different from our own, familiar yet distinctly belonging to a time in the past. And then he goes into when he would spend hours in 6th grade at the library on the couch with his mother reading The Time Machine. So you have this metaphor that's starting here. And then he talks about the time machine, and it's a book that his mom gave to him and he read many, many times. And then he found his mother in pain one time when he came home. They realized that she had an illness, and he actually wanted to reread the book. And he talks about a lot about why it's his favorite book and how it helped him shed light on his mother's diagnosis and his mother's illness. So he makes these huge connections between, this isn't just about his mom getting sick. This is about Jack's journey through his mother's illness and how he was able to find solace and peace and also a purpose for doing cancer research from even a piece of literature like The Time Machine. And it's really a beautiful piece. And so Jack really worked very hard on this. And like I said, we finalized on V5. As far as the UPenn supplements go, if you take a look here, we followed the same sort of process but he only finalized on V2. Like I said, Jack was a naturally gifted writer, so it was not very difficult, very clear writer to edit for him. But if you take a look here, he let me know when V1 was ready. You can't tell, but it was a little over word count. But he put all 3 essays right there in the document. I made a copy. And also, I put some comments here, right? And the pen excerpt. Okay? And so you have the pen excerpt here. And so we really have and that's something that you can work with the Ivymind mentors. They'll help you along the way. And we were able to edit after V2 and finalize it then. And so this is part of, what we do at Ivymind. We know what these colleges want. We know what the universities want. And we're able to see these patterns and kind of help along. And again, Jack was very motivated, very ambitious, and he really followed the instruction really well. He followed my process really well. And I feel that we were, very, very successful in the essay journey. And I want to congratulate Jack for his tremendous work, and his brilliant attitude, and for just being accepting of, my edits and so